pobre gente que no se lo merece.
Oh yeah.
Woo!
Oh.
Yeah. That was La Banda Escalavera with Injusto. I miss live shows.
Soon.
Hello
Seems
and
like
welcome to It's Happening Show, community grassroots media for the people, by the people. I'm Jose Gloria.
And I'm Dylan Thompson. We are your hosts tonight. Indeed.
Whoa. It's happening. It's a movement of the heart and of the mind. It's the energy of the universe that creates waves inside us and all around us, which allows us to activate, motivate, then elevate vibrationally and intellectually towards love, truth, justice, and wisdom. It's happening in every which way.
It's Happening is a culture of empowerment. It's people having the right to exist and participate as equals. It's a dream of what the world could be. But the future we want is only possible if we make it happen. So stand up, get informed, and fight back.
Fight back.
Yeah. Muting ourselves show. The rest of the show you have to read lips.
Could you hear me now? Oh, all right.
Oh,
it's fine. It didn't matter.
Maybe next time.
You could be anywhere in the world right now, but you're here with us, so we thank you because of you.
It's happening. Oh.
Ow.
Yeah, welcome back. We did it.
We did it.
Here.
2 shows in a row for 2
shows
weeks.
in a row. It's a record.
Oh, man.
You know, yeah. We're getting old.
We are.
Getting old, like.
We're getting old.
Yep. These joints are wearing out, man. We can't get 3 consecutive shows going.
Yeah. That's too much. I don't want to strain myself. Pull a mental hamstring or something. Is that a thing?
Yeah. Now it is. We've coined the term. Protect your mental hamstring, folks. The PSA, straight from the heart.
Yeah. Speaking of like stretching your mind, man, I'm really not emotionally like ready to go back into society and be around people. Like the societal anxiety is really kicking in. I legit like, and it was happening during the pandemic. I would see like shows on TV with a lot of people congregated, and I start to get nervous. Like, oh, they shouldn't be standing too close.
Oh my God, what are they doing?
Yeah.
Get very worried.
It's a thing.
Yeah, we'll have to get used to it. I mean, I'm not going to say I let myself go, but I mean, like when you don't have to go into the office every day, I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're basically, like bathing sporadically and, like, maybe like,
it's
just,
a good,
yeah, but, leaving your underwear on, like, like, I don't know.
I think it's a sustainability thing,
Yeah, it's about the environment, man.
Dude, yeah, come on.
Anywho, this is show number 197, man. We are 3 shows away from our 200 show. We're gonna have an action-packed 200 show coming up.
Oh yes,
special guests, special shout-outs, and surprises. We'll talk more about that.
Crazy.
We're gonna have our a little bit later Brandon Pho. We're gonna talk about all things Santana, Little Saigon, in his work in the investigative journalist powerhouse that is the voice of OC. Before that, but before that, just go through some quick stories, man. There's been a lot of things happening, of course, and the one thing that's sadly has been happening again and again are these mass shootings. And one hit really close to home here in Orange, right?
Oh yeah, big time. I guess we don't know still like the motive behind the shooter, but he went into a business complex in Orange and like used a bike chain to chain the front gates so people couldn't escape. And he killed 4 people and 2 people were injured. Now like a child that was even 9 years old was killed there. So this is making headlines. National headlines. Still yet to see exactly what was going on here, but sad case. And I even saw this other thing on Reddit about some woman who started opening fire on Burger King employees or like McDonald's employees because they took too long on the wait for the order. And it's kind of like, that's the downside of giving everyone a gun. because people make mistakes, people aren't perfect, people freak out, maybe have some kind of panic attack and do something stupid, and the last thing you want is a gun to be around when you make these kinds of people can end up making these horrible choices, and they end up murdering a bunch of people. It's like,
right.
Yeah,
right. It reminds me of road rage and why you shouldn't flip off people when they cut you off, because they could have a gun, shoot you down.
Oh yeah.
And that was a thing for like a hot second, right? When that was a hot guy with a hot weapon summer. That was bad. That was a bad summer. But no, it's it's an ongoing kind of thing. But
yeah, for sure.
Speaking of crazies, things happening in cars, New York Police Department officers can no longer search a vehicle due to the smell of marijuana alone, a new memo says.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Wow, that's something. I know. I mean, they have a plethora of excuses. They have a smorgasbord of excuses already to choose from. But I guess to take this option away from them, the memo says burnt or unburnt marijuana.
Right.
Alone, the scent of it can't be used as a reason to search someone. So, yeah, but come on. They're going to say whatever. They're like, oh, it feels like it. Like there's a chakra in here that I think you're high. And yeah, they'll come up with something. But it's a creep, the slow creep of marijuana normalization into policy. So, because I guess it became recreational, became legal in New York recently. So now it's policy, NYPD.
I'm totally supportive of it, right? Just because you smell like alcohol doesn't mean that you were drinking and then drove. You could have been working at a distillery, okay?
Yeah.
You could be working at a beer making facility.
I'm a taxpayer, damn it. You know how much taxes they pay? Okay.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Just because I smell this way.
Yeah. This is my natural odor, and
I naturally reek of marijuana.
I'm actually straight edge. How dare you? Yeah.
But I live in an apartment, and the ventilation.
Made of hemp.
It's a long story.
Yeah,
but trust me, it just gets everywhere.
Trust me, bro. Don't judge me by my smell. So I guess they can.
It must be my new air freshener. That's all, officer.
That'd be a good one.
Anywho, yeah, that's a doozy.
Oh yeah, and some other police news. The officer Derek Chauvin, the officer who is charged is having a trial for the killing of George Floyd. Officers have already testified against him, saying he used totally unnecessary force against George Floyd. So it looks like they're either posing to make this guy the fall guy for the department on the issue, because it doesn't look like they're defending him on that sense. So yeah, I mean, it's good that he's speaking out, but the department definitely needs to have accountability in the issue too, and they can't just say, oh, just this one bad apple, good thing we got rid of that bad apple, haha, everything's fine, right?
Exactly. But at the same time, this is very historic in many ways. I don't think it's very common that police officers cross the holy blue line and testify against their fellow brothers in blue. So that is a thing.
Oh yeah,
it's an uplift. But you're absolutely right. It's more about them just saving their ass. Like, this guy's gonna be the sacrificial lamb. Like, he was the bad one. We're good. Like, nothing to see here. But yeah, but the video has been coming out in more video than we had seen. It just kind of definitely triggers the emotions of anger and rage against this asshole that put his knee on a man for 9 minutes. And you saw him pulling back the thumb and everything. Like, he really wanted to hurt him. And he wasn't resisting at that point. He just was trying to prove a point. Fucker.
Yeah.
Anyways.
True. And I mean, it goes into our next quick story here, but there's a lot of anger by the police. I mean, it's even manifesting with another attack against the U.S. Capitol Police. An officer was killed after someone rammed their car into a checkpoint, and apparently the suspect got out and was shot after. I guess he came at people with knives and a knife. But yeah, when I heard this story, I'm like, oh, whoa, there's another like a right-wing white nationalist attack or something. And then I looked into it, and it's more like some guy, 25-year-old. I think he's a person of color, and it looks like he is following like a Farrakhan, or the Nation of Islam, like black separatist movement, and had some kind of probably a religious Christian like Revelation style, the world's ending kind of thing. So it seems like I couldn't tell if it was political or like a mental religious kind of break this guy had, and he decided to attack the Capitol alone like that and be killed.
Yeah.
But they're so far not calling it terrorism.
It seems like more. I mean, he did have some beliefs, but Nation of Islam, or the Nation, like is a Muslim kind of organization. So I think he was kind of went through his phase, which many of us go through, which just go down the rabbit hole of YouTube videos.
Oh my god!
And I had mental health issues, but it seems like he just wanted to kill. He just wanted to be killed. It was it's like, oh well, I want to get taken out, so I'm gonna ram my car, and death by a police officer at that point, right?
I guess so.
It feels like more like that than terrorism, but who knows? More details are to come on that, as well as the Orange shooting.
Oh yeah.
Our next quick story: University scientists deconstruct COVID-19 vaccines and publish recipe on open web. Is this a good idea?
Well, it's like they do this. Like a university, what was it, Stanford? They got what would have been disposed vaccines, or that were only partially used, or something that still had stuff in it. They analyzed it, found the RNA sequence, and then put it on GitHub. So you can basically. So I'm just saying, like, if you have a guy that can do some RNA sequencing, like, hit me up. I'll send them the URL to that GitHub repo.
I got a guy. He's really good with this science stuff. All right.
Give you a good vaccine. Good vaccine. Tastes real good. It'll taste really good. Yeah. So
give me a good mRNA sequence. I'll see what I could do for you. All right.
Yes, exactly. So I don't know. We'll see. I think this is good because apparently Pfizer's sequence is already available. So this is the Moderna one. So it's not like they don't eventually end up releasing this kind of information. I think it could be. It's a good thing. It'll help. It could help some scientists narrow down some errors. There are a few reasons they gave why it would be useful to make it public information. So anyway, so now we have that. Good for science. Woo!
And with that, let's go ahead and transition into our top stories.
Top stories. Wait,
Thompson.
hold on. I thought they were just talking about news stories. What's this part?
Top stories.
I don't understand why. There wasn't even name. Was there a name for the first section of stories? I don't think so.
Okay, guys, come on. You know our show by now. We just have news, sporadic news. That's what we'll just start calling the whole segment, sporadic news. Okay, moving on. Woo! Tied to the last story. This is about COVID, right? There are 4 Orange County zip codes. Everybody 16 and older is already eligible for the COVID shot, right? Apparently this came as a surprise to a lot of people. But as of March 26th, anyone living in 92701, 92703, 92805, 92844, you all could get your shots if you're over 16. So what happened here? Apparently the mayor, the people who run LA Latino Health Access, the councilmen of Garden Grove, none of them heard about this because apparently it was up to the county to make the announcement, and they did so, but in a press conference happening on March 31st. So that's 5 days after people could have started receiving it. So on one hand, we're grateful that they're focusing on highly affected communities. On the second hand, it's like, but you got to tell people, like, yeah, it's good that it's still early, but there was a breakdown in the communication. I'm sure all of these nonprofits and government agencies would have wanted to know that. They could have started mobilizing their people to get in the queue for this stuff. So, little breakdown. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm interested because, and maybe we'll talk with a little bit about it with Brandon in a bit. But yeah, that information is not getting disseminated is very troubling. For sure. It's like, because people could have already been vaccinated and it's not. So yeah, this flow of information needs to get on up. Get on up.
Yep.
Bring it up a notch.
Yeah, and I mean, there maybe Brandon can also talk about some transparency issues with the county as far as knowing who they're making contracts with, some drama around that. So yeah, definitely need some more transparency on the county level. It seems like,
no doubt.
All
right,
county level. Yep.
Crap. So moving on to our next story, Uber ordered to pay $1.1 million to blind passenger who was denied rides 14 times. Arbitrators rebuffed the company's position that it wasn't liable for drivers' behavior given their status as contractors. So yeah.
This sounds familiar.
Yeah, San Francisco Bay Area resident Lisa Irving, who is blind and uses a guide dog, made a claim against Uber in 2018, maintaining that she was either denied a ride altogether or harassed by Uber drivers not wanting to transport her with her guide dog. As a result, Irving was left stranded late at night, which made her late to work and led to her eventual firing. So twice, Irving claimed drivers bullied and verbally abused her. Discriminatory behavior continued despite her complaining to Uber, she said. So yeah, boom. And this kind of touches on, and we've talked about it when we've had folks from Uber here, as far as the regulations or how much Uber is doing to prevent sexual harassment by drivers towards passengers and vice versa, and how it deals with that, which it didn't deal with it very well, or it was very hands off, because it was trying to dance between like, okay, well, we are independent contractors, so we can't tell you exactly how to do this, but at the same time we are trying to cover our butts so that we don't get sued, which this is the case and what happened. And as a former Uber driver, I can tell you that I did not look forward to having dogs in my car. That was not something that I was just like, yeah, all right, bring them on. Like, yeah, if she's your little buddy, I'm emotional support dog. All right, let's do it. I mean, I draw the line at emotional support ostrich, right? Which I've heard of, or emotional support ferret. But beyond, like, at some point that, the Uber laid down laws, like, y'all have to, you don't have questions to ask. They say that it's their support dog. You get them on, and that's that. But in this case, they discriminated against a blind woman, which is not okay. And they are sorry for it. $1.1 million sorry worth of sorries.
Yeah. That's a big case, I guess, for differently abled rights. I don't know what the correct phrasing of that is, but it's funny, like, we've been fighting on this issue and like a little tug of war in California, right? Like, first the voter said, you know what, they should count as employees, right? The drivers. And I think that would make all of them, like, because the excuse they use in this article is saying, oh no, they're contractors, remember we reversed that law. Remember the voters? We brought it to the voters again, and then they said, you know what, forget it. Never mind. You know what I'm saying? And now they're back to being contractors, and then but this is just bringing the issue again. So what are they? Like, oh, they're contractors, but we have to make sure they adhere to this policy of non-discrimination, right? So yeah, I feel like this is not over, right? And it's
Yeah, well, I mean, the question about how the power that these these companies that claim to be independent contractor driven companies have, on a national level here in California, they paid for a proposition which propositions were the intention was that democracy was supposed to work for the community, the people, the voters, and that couldn't get elected officials to do something while they could take it upon themselves. That now has turned the other way, where corporations use it as to stop regulation or to propose things that supersede existing state labor laws. But one last point on it is in the UK, the Uber lost there, and they were made to say that they are in fact employees. But UK is a different political context, of course, and they can't buy off or propose propositions that circumvent their existing laws, or in this case, the ruling by their Supreme Court, which I don't know what it's called, something, maybe not Supreme Court, but their high courts.
Yeah, it's pretty cooler, I bet, over there.
Way cooler. I was like, is it House of Commons? No, like
I don't know. I just imagine everyone's wearing
Circle of Lords.
Yes, exactly. Everyone's like screaming at each other, like yelling, like sarcastic jokes. Order! If you could only get that wig in order, like they just start making like jokes at each other. Anyway, yeah, something like that.
Speaking of worker rights.
Speaking of that subject, funny you mentioned that, Jose.
Yeah, dude. It looks like Amazon is getting in more trouble as they become even more successful. A labor board has found that Amazon illegally fired activist workers. I want to do like surprised Pikachu. Yeah. And that the National Labor Relations Board has found Amazon illegally retaliated against two of its most outspoken internal critics when it fired them last year. This is according to CNBC. They fired Emily Cunningham and Marin Costa, two former user experience designers, for apparently repeatedly violating internal policies, but they claim it was because of their continued criticism of Amazon, which this board has confirmed and found merit in their case of their claims of unfair labor practices against the company. So yeah, I mean, like, least surprising move for a giant, like what is becoming a giant monopoly conglomeration. But yeah, I mean, this happens throughout our history, right? Like labor history. And man, it was much worse way back in the day. Like they used to bring them, like Pinkertons would like be busting your skull in and stuff like that. Nowadays we have, but it's like it's differently horrific in today's landscape, where like they won't like overtly beat you, but they'll like hire you and won't let you go to the bathroom when you need to, and yeah, and other cruelties, and put a happy smile on it. Isn't there like a little Amazon? It's a little smile, the Prime. It's like,
I always thought it looked like phallic.
Oh,
to put it.
Oh, maybe. But both fit. I mean, some kind of patriarchal symbol of yeah.
Maybe I just see these things.
Yeah, you know.
It always felt so. The Amazon symbol definitely felt like a phallic type, esque type of a drawing. But but.
Yeah,
it's like Rorschach. You see like what you want.
Yeah, it's like it's an aggressively curved penis. I think there's like a feminist critique somewhere in there. I'm sure there's some like feminist paper written on this, but yeah, whatever their symbol is, they try to put a happy face.
It's like, no, it's a symbol of how they screw you, like literally every day.
Oh man. Brought that full circle. There you
go. Yeah. Oh man. Amazon they're not. People are turning on them. And I think a report recently came out that America doesn't like billionaires. So, but it likes convenient, ways of getting stuff delivered to them with, free shipping. That they do like. So,
yeah, it's rough.
Decisions, I tell you.
But dude, this even reminds me of
capitalism.
Uber.
Give it and take it away.
Yeah, this reminds me of Uber and Lyft though. Like, I was going to mention the last story. I've been hearing rumors on the street that like taxis are now at like the same price point, or maybe better than Lyft or Uber, depending on circumstances. And it's like, and I even think, how did they do that? You know, when they started Lyft and Uber, we've had guests on, right? They said, oh, they paid everyone really well. I think it was less expensive for the user, la-da-da, la-di-da. And, but they need, that's like the launching of the company where they need to get their hooks in, you know? They need to get their hooks into people and make this thing something people can't live without, right? And then once like it becomes popular, you're down probably millions of dollars or whatever it is. They spend all this, and then you bring the prices up. Then you make sure the workers aren't considered employees and they don't get like the same kind of wages they were receiving at the start. And like, and you know, they're going to get their hooks in. They're going to buy up all this real estate. They're going to own all the shipping, and yeah, and then they'll say how much it costs. So.
You don't tell us, we'll tell you.
But yeah, they're getting their hooks in, man. They're becoming unstoppable.
You know, I think it's going to come to the point where you know, just people are not going to want to drive for Uber anymore and Lyft, because they'll have heard enough stories about, you know, people not making as much money as people heard, you know, because at first you always had that friend who's like, oh, I'm making so much money, like, you know, like I made $300 or like last night. It's like, okay, but you didn't incorporate how much your car devalued because of all the miles that you drove last night, and or other things that ultimately pile up. You know, and right now it's convenient to not, you know, for people it's like, oh, I don't want to drive, I'll just do Uber, and you know, but yeah. It's like it gets to a point where I was like, you're spending $15 one way and $15 another, then it starts to not factor in as much as just buying a car and figuring out different ways of, or working from home, getting another job. So they are in trouble. And you know, the taxi companies could be making a comeback, and should be, because you know they took a hit initially, and I think the ones that survived the initial subsidizing, it like reminds me of like corn in the United States versus corn in Mexico right after NAFTA. Like you know, government subsidized that, so they undercut them, but you know, eventually maybe some corn companies did survive because they were able to like withstand the initial subsidizing once the markets, you know, balanced. Or in the case of Uber, they were no longer subsidized as much as they were initially to, you know, try to recruit more Uber drivers or Lyft drivers. So.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Very interesting, this capitalism and how it goes. But speaking of how it goes, no one knows how it goes and how it flows. And on our shows, we talk about these foes all the time, yos. And that would be, of course, our good friends at Voice of OC. So Voice of OC is an amazing local investigative journalism online organization, nonprofit, the Orange County's nonprofit newsroom, as they call it. And, you know, and we've interviewed folks before. We've had Norberto Santana on. We've had that white guy, you know his name. Just
oh my God, you mean Nick Gerda?
Nick Gerda. Just kidding. He's my friend.
You can say that.
He's my white friend. I could say that.
Personal friend, yeah. Personal friend of the show.
So one of the things that they are talking about, of many, and they do an incredible job. My tip of the hat, and all these things to them. But is one of the things that they've been dealing with recently has been the issue of handling hate. And so, and part of that series, there was this new article that came out today from our guest today, Brandon Pho. Santa Ana's Vietnamese residents often find community in other cities. These leaders want to change that. So we want to talk about that with today's guest. Brandon Pho is a Voice of OC reporter covering Central Orange County, specifically the city of Santana and Little Saigon. Currently, he's core member at Report for America, a nationwide local news support organization. He also writes about the environment, transportation, and the OC Fair. Welcome to the show, Brandon.
Hey, guys. What's up?
Hey.
Hey. First of all, am I saying your last name right?
Yeah, it's Pho. We don't pronounce it Pho, or, the way soup is pronounced, but
Okay, I was like, is it like
Oh.
the soup where it's like pho? Yeah.
no, yeah. It was actually taken up by my great grandfather when he moved to Vietnam from China, and he basically this is the family legend, but
Let's
changed
hear it.
his yeah the family legend was that actually the last name was Pu, which was the familial name of the last emperor of China, and it's long been believed that in my family that my great grandfather was a member of the family who fled. I think sometime in the early 20th century, and he moved to Vietnam and he changed his last name to be more acclimated to the local culture, and he also just didn't want people to know he was Chinese because being Chinese in Vietnam at that time probably wasn't the best thing. So that's the very casual retelling of the family story. I have uncles and aunts who could go on about this for hours.
So your grandparents were Chinese,
My great grandfather was Chinese, but he married a Vietnamese.
Vietnamese.
He
So
married-
you're part some percentage.
Oh yeah,
Chinese and
I'm
Vietnamese.
all of that combined, and also part white.
Hey, all right, yeah, it's multicultural babies. You're the future, man.
Oh yeah, everybody's supposed to look like me in about 50 years. I think is that what did he say?
All right, well, we got a handsome curly future ahead of us.
Yeah.
Curly haired. Listen, so there's a lot of things to talk to you about, Brandon, but let's go ahead and maybe just start with the issue of the hashtag Stop Asian Hate, right? So given the recent shootings in Atlanta, but also the anti-Asian rhetoric that came with the Donald Trump administration, really being intentional about focusing the blame on China, and then as a result, then making it the China virus. And then slowly but surely, you started hearing, communities saying that they were facing, discrimination. People spitting on them, like telling them to go back to their country, that it was their fault. Even kids at schools, right? But then it really kind of started ramping up to the point that this hashtag went viral in recent time, right? But the question is, of course, saying that is wrong is one step, but then how do we truly incorporate, being an inclusive with our communities of Asian or Vietnamese or locally, and well, that's what the article kind of talks about. So maybe you can talk a little bit about, just that the movement to hashtag Stop Asian Hate, and then how it's being addressed by folks here in Santana, and what you touch on your article.
Yeah. So I mean, it's no secret that Asian Americans have really been scapegoated for, the coronavirus pandemic, and with that sort of scapegoating, you've seen an increase in incidents of hate crimes or just overall racism, aggression, prejudice toward, sometimes the elderly in the Asian American community. And in Orange County, that has, been the case as well, as we've seen from people who've shown up to recent Board of Supervisors meetings to talk about, their experience at Asian American Senior Citizen Center in Garden Grove, local Asian American, organizers who say people they work with have been, punched in the stomach. I think that was detailed in a story I did a few weeks ago, that really sort of started to quote people on questions of, we're seeing all of these demonstrations, vigils, if you will, pop up across Orange County to, hashtag Stop Asian Hate, which is sort of the hashtag that has sprung up in reaction to what's been going on, sort of this national movement to combat anti-Asian racism and racism in general in light of the pandemic. But what we've seen in Orange County also is, local officials have been more than happy to, convene at meetings and issue, statements denouncing racism, denouncing anti-Asian hate and xenophobia and prejudice and whatnot. And, some people are questioning, okay, you can enact all the resolutions you want, you can set up all these demonstrations, but at the end of the day, is anything really going to change unless you commit to actual structural changes to the way, Asian American residents, for example, are empowered in Orange County. And that was really where I got the idea for the story that we ran today. Thai Viet Phan, who was the first Vietnamese American woman elected to the Santa Ana City Council, since her campaign days was talking about, the need to offer more city services in Vietnamese, to, reach out to people who get letters from the city about assistance programs or, all these things in English or Spanish, but, not Vietnamese. And, how do we expect those residents to be able to, consume that information and know what's going on without, some of the services that are offered in Garden Grove, where you have Christy Tai, who's a community relations specialist, and basically, takes direct phone calls from people in Vietnamese, or even shows up on Vietnamese media, which is like hugely popular in Little Saigon. So yeah, and the story, and so that's where we got the idea for that story. I interviewed Ty for it, and she was talking about, you see some Vietnamese businesses in Santa Ana, but you don't really see it the way you see it in Westminster, by the Asian Garden Mall, right? Like, yeah. I remember like there was this night market in August of 2019. I think they do it every year. And I went to that night market outside Asian Garden Mall, and it's like this vibrant, like, display of like all of these local businesses that are Vietnamese or Asian American. There were like Japanese restaurants that had booths set up, and you really had this like very dynamic and vibrant cultural feel to the city. Like it really did feel like, a Vietnamese community, like sort of the absence of services in Vietnamese, in language services, a community liaison in Santa Ana, according to, Thai Viet Phan, means that residents in Santa Ana are just going to go, west of the river to find their community. Why would they stick around here if there's nothing for them? If there's no, if the city of Santa Ana is going to celebrate its 150th birthday, why, Thai Viet Phan said she couldn't really find anything that sort of catered to the Asian American or Vietnamese community in Santa Ana. And so that was sort of, it's one way of focusing on the way local officials empower people of color in the county, not just through things like political debates over issuing a resolution. I remember, like, during the summer social justice protests, you had Doug Chafee and Dodd Wagner arguing about like a resolution about anti-Black racism, and they were arguing like the difference between African American and Black. Like, it's not like just that, right? It's actual sort of policy decisions you can make to really put actions behind those words. And so in the case of, Thai Viet Phan and her arts and culture commissioner appointee Indigo Vu, it's things like investing in arts and culture programs for Vietnamese residents. It's tackling issues of housing where it's unique to the Vietnamese community. Because I mean, in my family, our household is multi-generational. So how do you zone areas that allow for multi-generational housing? So there's all these like different ways you could really do the job that an anti-Asian racism resolution is meant to do, but through things that actually mean something or tangible. And that was sort of the argument that Ty was making that I decided to write about. And, when she talks about, Vietnamese Santa Ana residents, they just find community elsewhere. I interviewed Indigo, I interviewed Tracy Lott, Viet Rise, and, they all had the same story, which is, I mean, if there's nothing for the Vietnamese community in Santa Ana, why should they stay? And, what they all agree on is that Santa Ana has this real opportunity to have a truly like cosmopolitan cultural solidarity thing. Santa Ana is known for its large Latino population. How do we bridge that with the understanding that we also have a big Vietnamese American population? And Indigo Vu was talking about like there's a difference between a superficial what did she say? She said cultural.
It's they. Pronoun is they.
Yes. I'm sorry. Indigo Vu is non-binary. They were saying like, there's a difference between a superficial cultural community and an actual cultural community. And what they meant by that was, it's not just eating somebody else's food from another country. It's also, having them call into, meetings and participate in events and community events and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Right.
first of all, I want to say that I appreciate that you say it, Santana the right way, Santana. Like, so
Thank
you got respect, homie. You got ooh cred.
Try.
Yeah, but and a lot of things come up, and I'm sure Dylan has some thoughts too. But one is like, a lot of us just realized, or maybe kind of started to understand the importance of the Vietnamese community in Santana, where people think Santana, they think, oh, a lot of Mexicans there, a lot of brown people, and it is like 80%, right? But you think about Westminster, Garden Grove, you think it's like a lot of Asian folks there. It's like, so to me, like, I mean, definitely, like, there's a lot that the city and needs to do to be intentionally inclusive. And there's a difference between being intentionally inclusive and being intentionally exclusive. And I think that's a fair point to make. But, like that folks gravitated to where the hub was, for Asian in other cities that are more higher percentage Vietnamese or Asian, like, makes sense to me in the same way that it makes sense that, the ethnocentricity of Santana is Latino. But at the same time, it does make the necessity that we need to, to build those bridges. But the last thing I'll say is, like, district elections was built on the reality that Asian Americans and Vietnamese in particular in Santana were not, included in, the decision making process. There was no elected, and as and Thai was the first Vietnamese American person and the first Asian woman to be elected. But I remember I was part of that campaign. I had a hard time finding Vietnamese Americans that were wanting to get involved. And so it went both ways, right? Like, we didn't work with them enough, but then they also weren't tapped into perhaps the politics, and so I don't know. Those are my thoughts on it.
Yeah, that's like a chicken or the egg situation. Are they not connected to politics because they didn't want to, or it's because we didn't give them an opportunity, didn't have any materials for them, didn't have someone to call and talk to? And just to throw on another idea, Brandon, and maybe I can get your feedback. The city set up a Fiesta Marketplace to cater to like a Latino businesses, right? And I mean, I know other parts of the city are jealous for economic development plans from the city and stuff. So I don't see why you couldn't have a business plan that incorporates that on the west side of the city even. And with regard to these kinds of solutions, like, how do you see cities in Orange County taking this? Are most people going the resolution and hopes and prayers route, or are people making concrete ordinances or actual changes in policy?
Yeah, well, we have some sort of idea right now here in Santana. It was Tyget Van and Phil Becerra on the city council that have requested sort of a discussion tomorrow at the council meeting. The possibility that the police department could give them monthly reports on hate crimes that happen in the city, right? I spoke with Phil over the phone today about it, and he was saying, this helps us, be proactive. My hope is we see that there isn't really as much of a problem here as in other cities. If there is a worse problem in other cities, but if there is a large number or an alarming number of hate crimes that do happen, at least we have that information and can act on it. And it does remain to be seen sort of like what the city would be able to do once they have that data, like what options are in their toolkit for how to respond to that. That'll be very interesting to see in the long run if they do move forward on that idea. And it also speaks to this very interesting dynamic set up at the OC Human Relations Commission. So for listeners who don't or aren't familiar exactly with what the commission does, it receives county funding to basically research hate crimes and racism in the region overall and understand how much of a problem it is in Orange County. And they do annual reports. And what Ali Edwards of the OC Human Relations Commission told me during an interview within the last 2 weeks, I think it was, she said, we don't we gather the data with the help of local law enforcement agencies, local, school districts, government agencies. If they have data, we try and cooperate with them and partner with them to gather it all so that we can make the hate crime report possible. And also, they have their online website for reporting hate crimes, and they don't have enough funding to make it available in all these languages, which is a whole other thing, right? Like language barriers are a huge reason why we might have flaws in that data. But in keeping with my train of thought here is, Ali Edwards told me, we don't disaggregate the data by city with those hate crime reports. And I asked her why, and she said, because local governments are not mandated by any type of law to come to us and give us the data. It's voluntary. And so, when it comes to partnering with these agencies, she compared it to like relationship building and trust over time, right? Some local officials might not want that data disaggregated because it might make their city look bad.
Right.
And I asked, well, what do you say to the appearance that you're just, this is some form of accountability being, lifted off of them? When you choose not to disaggregate the data, you're not putting the spotlight on a city that might not have the best hate crime statistics, right? What do you say to the appearance that maybe these officials get away with that? And she said, it's just this calculation we have to make in the interest of the greater good of getting as much data as we can. And she told me that if local government agencies were mandated by some type of state law, they would have more latitude to change their doing things. So that's a very interesting. And now you have Santa Ana, where some council members want to, in a sense, disaggregate that data. They want the Santa Ana specific, information about, how to what extent is racism affecting this city.
Oh yeah, that's fast. I'm almost surprised that they're not mandated or anything to do that. I don't want to say Huntington Beach came to mind when you were talking, but that's just because they were KKK flyers found there recently. So I'm wondering what cities are highly impacted.
Oh yeah, it would be interesting to see that.
But that's even a good policy push, on the state or federal level, having better reporting requirements around this kind of stuff. I could even see that moving forward. Maybe I kind of want to go back to Jose's question a bit. Is it a chicken or the egg thing? Are people don't we have to make it so people can plug in before we can expect them to be interested in the politics, or but maybe it's vice versa, because it seems like the people that it seems recently in Orange County with all the cities going to district elections, that the people that have been left out are fighting back in a sense and getting their say. So I don't know what's the right formula to success here, but
right. Preaching to the choir there. Yeah, I think we all want to know that. And I would say too, it does go back to, one of the strongest examples of what you were talking about, chicken or the egg, is the language barriers to hate crime reporting. How do you expect people to talk about sort of their experiences that can be traumatic, that can really affect them for a long time after it's happened? How do you expect them to open up about it? Not just, for the first time or stepping out of their comfort zone, but in an entirely in a language that they don't have a full grasp on, or they aren't particularly fluent in. It just so that's concerns about language barriers and hate crime reporting kind of speak directly to that question.
Yeah, but there's been always hate crime against Asians, not always, but there's this is not a new thing, right? And I think it comes in waves, right? There was a lot of anti-Asian kind of, during World War II, for example, right? Or anti-Japanese, but then they just bulked everybody together. It's type of thing. So that, but in this in particular, I don't know. I just have challenges right now because I remember seeing that press conference during the electoral, when that Ho Chi Minh situation came up, right? And people raised it, for good reasons. and people have experiences with it, and I'm not here to dictate the Vietnamese, refugees in the same way that I'm not here to dictate Cuban refugees and their feelings about it, or the conversation about socialism or capitalism in general, and the roles that America played in all these countries, and but it just felt like this, like you said, like this is an easy way for politicians to. For a long time, people just felt like if you wanted to be good with the Vietnamese community locally, you just had to be anti-communist, full stop, and now it's like, okay, well. And that continued during the election where you have Harley Ruda, kind of standing there. But it's like, does Harley Ruda really care about Asian hate, or was he just doing it just because that's what he was expected to do as a woke, Democrat? What I mean? And so I think the question then, really becomes like, how do you truly engage that community? And I think the answer that Santana at least had was, well, we need to have district elections so that they have a Vietnamese representative who, she is now doing a lot of the heavy lifting to bring highlight to her community that elected her, and by and large, but maybe we would not have had of this had district elections not happened, because Vietnamese, yeah. So for different reasons, but and the city has Vietnamese translation in their emails and their Facebook now, so it's a thing, right? But there needs to be more, is what folks are saying, right?
And it goes beyond just hate crimes, and sort of what you said when you mentioned the elections and that press conference about Ho Chi Minh that the Democratic Party put on. It sort of speaks to this assumption that you can really solve all of your problems with representation by doing these sort of taking these actions that you think means something to the entire community, when in the reality it's more complex than that, right? Like Vietnamese Americans, their entire lives are not bent on communism versus anti-communism. It means something to a lot of people who fled the war and have traumatizing memories. But what about second and third generation Vietnamese Americans? They have real issues that affect them too. Housing affordability. Are their parents documented? Deportations. I think Vietrise was very vocal about that over the last several weeks when the Biden administration, was set to deport some Vietnamese American immigrants. And yeah, it all speaks to that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Tracy chimed in. It's like there were definitely Vietnamese people in Santana who have been interested in politics for many, many years, but they either didn't have a place to go, or folks just didn't do more to find them, or maybe there wasn't the trust there for them to want to be involved. Yeah. All of that, a little bit of all of that at different situations. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't that Vietnamese people weren't, or that they didn't try to run in the past. I believe that they did. And there was even different either commissioners or committees that included Vietnamese Americans. I mean, they were good friends with Miguel Pulido for a long time, and they supported him. And then that's another kind of thing, that the conservativeness of Vietnamese politics, to not overgeneralize, because like you said, the younger generation has perhaps different values or things that they care about, and that's why I like Viet Rise and the work that they do, and Tracy and other folks, because they really, it's like, don't pigeonhole us into that's all we are. Like our community, our youth, we care about being able to have affordable rents, to have affordable housing, so that when we go to college, we can come back to our communities, and and so on and so forth. So, and also the immigration issue, which I think is a real good and important bridge, right, between the Vietnamese community and the immigrant community of Latinos in Santana, that perhaps we don't think about Vietnamese getting deported when we think about the issue of immigration, right?
Right.
Man, so this, so I want to kind of move on into the conversation around the houseless or unsheltered, as they are also referred to, as in your neck of the woods of and so this is an issue not to Santana alone, and I mean Santana and Anaheim, especially around the riverbed, became like a hotbed for the conversation, and in many ways people, and myself included, feel like we've become the dumping ground for a lot of folks that want to just get rid of the issue, or out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. Doesn't help that the jail also releases folks here, and doesn't take them back to the cities that they come from. So then creates just a situation where encampments are coming up, and people that were against removing folks from the riverbed said, like, you're going to bring them into the communities. And the situation with El Centro and is case in point of that situation. They removed them from the Civic Center, from the Flag Plaza, and they're going to go into the surrounding communities. And so the surrounding communities have a choice. Do you call the cops and, get them to remove from your private property, or do you do, the humane thing, which is what El Centro did? And Norberto wrote about it and said that, he was in support of that situation. But, maybe but one of the situations, like, you all are tenants there or were tenants there, but also because of the situation that the center is not able to open up currently because and give the programs and other things because of the encampment that I believe has 30 to 40 people currently. But it's a big controversial situation now. So what are your thoughts on all the different dynamics?
Yeah, I mean, what happened at El Centro was like a watershed moment for, Orange County's homelessness crisis and debate, and sort of the conversation about what to do with the homeless in the region, because it encapsulates all of these issues, right? Like what you said when you mentioned the Santa Ana Riverbed, clearings. It sort of spoke to when the county shut down its last walk-in shelter, the Courtyard, right? We saw the encampment around us and go grow. And it speaks to what many call out as like this leaf blower approach. I think Norberto was quoted in Gustavo Arellano's LA Times article, when he was talking about it, when you just push these people around, out of sight, out of mind, like you said, what some people wonder what, officials expect to happen, right? Because these people, I mean, for all of these, referral only shelters that are popping up, around the county, we're still seeing homeless people out on the streets. And so, I think the overhanging question is, at the end of the day, what do we do with these people? And why haven't they been able to find shelter? Why were they in a shelter, or they were in a housing situation and they're back out on the street, right? What are some of the root causes for some of those problems that sort of continue this problem where we have people out on the streets? And so, basically El Centro and the city struck a deal to basically clear out the encampments. And I remember the city manager, Christine Ridge, told me, on the city's end, at the same time, they've had to, balance between, ensuring that El Centro's rights as private property owner are sort of listened to, but also they were saying, we've received a lot of complaints from residents. So on their end, they're trying to balance that quality of life issue. But on El Centro's end, this is happening because they're challenging local officials to do something about the homeless people on their property that doesn't involve law enforcement. And I had a conversation, with Brooke Weitzman, who was the lead attorney suing Orange County over the homelessness crisis. There's the case that Judge David O'Carter famously presided over. And she said one big problem is that, Orange County officials tend to just depend on police to be the door to a homeless shelter for, homeless people, or, a homeless shelter that can connect people with supportive housing and stuff like that. Because, with no more walk-in shelters in the county, these people need somebody who can refer them or who can get them into, they need to be sort of admitted, if you will, into these places. And, Brooke was talking about how officials are making a mistake relying on law enforcement as the way into shelters for homeless people, because, on one hand, obviously they're not behavioral health or mental health clinicians. They didn't go to those schools, right? They don't have those degrees. They went to law enforcement academies, and they're not properly equipped to understand the mental health needs of the person in front of them and be able to come to a conclusion 100% of the time, the right conclusion or decision about what to do with these people. And on the other hand, law enforcement officers, have a job to do to, basically their job is to arrest people who are breaking the law. And a big part of like law enforcement encounters with homeless people is a lot of these homeless people, their issues, their problems go beyond not having a home or shelter to go to. It's that they are also living with mental health, issues and drug abuse. And, there's that aspect that needs to be sort of cared for. They need services for that, right? Like, the same way, a drug addict, a drug addict in a wealthy family in South County needs to go to rehab, right? Like these people just need help. And so, Brooke was talking about, like, when you have police officers who are literally, it's their training, or it's their job to arrest people for drug use or illicit drug possession. When you have them coming into contact with these people who not only need shelter but need help, it's just going either to their arrest, or it's not going to result in an outcome that has that person placed in the place they need to go. And so that was a big point that she made, which is are cops police officers the right way into a shelter. And like I mean, yeah, so despite, and we have local officials celebrating these milestones, like the Placentia Navigational Center, which is referral only. A lot of people, there are talking about how, it has really reduced resident complaints in the area. I remember they had that big encampment on Crowther Avenue in the city, if you're familiar with that area. I think it was by like this Army surplus store. My coworker before the pandemic, sometime he took me to that store because he loves all that stuff that they sell there. National Center, they like to call them navigational centers. I think Buena Park has one. The regional homeless shelters that service multiple cities. Officials are saying here, but that this is a thing that's going for us, and we've connected some people with housing. But without those low barrier or walk-in shelters, if you will, when a lot of people are wondering, like, what about these people on the streets? Like, where are they going to go? Where are you going to put them? Because clearly they haven't been successful if they have tried in getting placed into one of these.
Yeah. No, it's a very complicated issue, and it's like like when you do one right thing, then then you kind of face other questions that perhaps are not so black and white. When it comes to the houseless community, like the situation in Echo Park comes to mind. I don't know if y'all are familiar with it, but long story short, the city council member in charge of that area, that ward, said like Echo Park is going to, be swept. They're going to put up fences and people can't live here anymore because there's complaints and the community wants their park back or whatever. And so they were able to, I believe, place all of the folks that were living there into homes. But then there was that, these activists and advocates that, kind of then faced off on the police, against the police. And while I very much personally have like feelings against the police and feel like when they mess up and when they, and you're right, they don't need to be dealing with the houseless at all. Like there's other agencies that are healthcare agencies, which, perhaps that's another issue, is like how the county has control over the healthcare agency in Santana. And if Santana had their own healthcare agency, they could probably deal with this better, but also being able to budget issues differently so that the police aren't having to deal with it, but these health agencies
defund the police.
But then there are that aspect of community, and and it, because I was an Occupy, it reminds me of Occupy. It's like, no, like you leave them here. It's like you don't want to fix the situation, you just want to maintain the situation as is, and the solution isn't to allow for encampments in and of itself. The hope is that we rehabilitate people and house people, but in between just like no fences, no walls, like let people like do what they want to do, stop criminalizing it. And they but it's like you just want to face off against the police. You just want
on the other right, adding on to that too, I remember Ben Vasquez telling me this. He's a leader at El Centro. telling me, why not find a place we can designate, like not an encampment, but a place that people who don't want to be, who probably didn't find the best circumstances in shelters or their supportive housing situation. Maybe they got kicked out of housing. They're back out on the streets. They're back out in the system looking for help. Why not just designate an area, not on someone's private property, but, sort of what we had in El Centro, because Ben was telling me, like, the city was able to send their social services, their outreach people to, the parking lot, and they in the lead up to El Centro and the city reaching that deal, people were connected with services because people knew where to find, the people that needed the help. And so it sort of strikes that balance between, it's like, these people that don't want to be placed into a shelter, some of those people view these referral only shelters that restrict your ability to move in and out as prisons. Like, for those people where they're not, maybe that's not the most suitable situation for them, why not just allow them to, be in this designated space, and, maybe they have rules for, you clean on this day, you take out the trash on this day, you clean up all of the litter on this day. Ben was sort of like spitballing that idea, like, that's, there we have options like that, right? That are sort of unique or creative or haven't been done before, that might be a better way to deal with this problem than just, calling the police or getting an abatement order.
Yeah, it's going to be like a spectrum of solutions, and maybe that's one of the harder ones, I feel, because, like, I don't know if you just mentioned, like, the referral program might be more popular for a particular neighborhood, because doesn't that work that, like, there's a pickup and drop off points for people elsewhere, and so, like, people can gather there, then take a bus to the center, so there aren't walk-ins and that kind of stuff that affect the neighborhood, right? Is that kind of how that works, the referral program?
The referral program, I'm not sure about, like, the exact way they're transported into the shelters. I know that I know that early in the process, when Buena Park, for example, was doing their navigational center, they were talking about transportation means such as, like, Lyft or Uber for some of these people. I don't know if they ever followed through on that, but yeah, I mean, when it comes to referral only, they're like, some people just view it as a very tight restriction on their ability to freely move about, and that's not what some homeless people in the county want. They just want the freedom to do what they want to do with their lives and take care of themselves, and approach the situation that they're in their own way. So what do you do for people like that? Like, I don't think, anybody will say that the county has, figured that question out yet. They're just,
no one has.
It's a hard one, because, like, I love the idea, like, you can have a place where you can camp, and, they'll take care of all the things, like, they'll clean it, they'll do everything they need to do, but it's like, where's that going to be? Who's that going to be built next to? Because, like, the whole NIMBYism is going to flare up once it's like, wait, people are just going to be walking in here, and, like, Orange County being so built out, so dense, it's like, it's fine. Like, if anything, the riverbed was that place. Like, maybe it wasn't regulated. I mean, you know what I'm saying? They didn't guarantee that it was going to be cleaned or whatever. Like, what if they just, instead of evicting everyone, put porta potties out there and organized and made sure they could get the hygiene good and waste disposal down? They didn't want to do that. Some prime real estate.
Right.
Nobody,
Right. Yeah.
Near their.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, nobody wants that near their neighborhood, and that's the problem. It's like, but then El Centro did. It's like everybody's NIMBY, not in my backyard.
Exactly.
But they're like, yes, in my backyard.
They're the YIMBYs.
The YIMBYs of houseless. But then the community is like, we don't want them here because they bring, crime, and that is it's quantifiable that there have been more calls or complaints or and then. How do you regulate drug use, right? It's like, people want to do their whatever they want to do at their house, that's fine. But then when the city is paying for something or providing a space for it, like you can't allow that, right? That doesn't. It's like the whole needle exchange program, right? It blew up in folks' faces. They're like, it sounds like a good idea, and in theory, it is a good idea when it's run correctly. But how it ultimately came down to is, like, there was just a lot of like used needles like that were not picked up, and that is a health hazard. So, and it's like the big question is like, whose rights matter more, you know? And it's not maybe one or the other, but it's like there's percentages perhaps, or that this is the conundrum. Like there's the rights that the houseless, the unsheltered have as human beings in this country, you know, that are victims of all sorts of things, capitalism in general, and, you know, societal ills, you know, in particular. And then, you know, there's a private entity that is El Centro, you know, a not profit, but also like the owner of a private building. And then there's a community that they are, you know, around. So, you know, like, and also there's the community of the membership of the people that want to go back into spaces, right? So
It's complicated.
Hashtag it's complicated, but yeah, I just fear that it's like it sometimes gets dichotomized into like, oh, the city bad, us good, homeless or houseless good, and it's not, right? And so then like, how do we deal with that? Because
Usually, but not always.
not always, but yeah, and so then it's like some people want to get rehabilitated, let's hook them up. Some people want to get housed, you know, or put in shelters. But then who are those that do not want to because they don't want to follow particular rules, can't go in and out? Why do they don't do that? Because they don't want drugs or, you know, weapons to come in and out of the shelters. Like there's legitimate reasons, like they won't allow dogs. Like, well, you know, there's also reasons for that, right? So you know, it just kind of gets caught up in this situation where the system's broken and people are broken, and we can't heal everybody and we can't fix the system. And but this, you know, the city of Santa Ana has done some stuff, not all the best stuff, but really who's at fault? It would it would seem to me like it would be the county, Brandon, and maybe you could speak a little bit about that and like the challenges that the county has that's around transparency and around, you know, the inability for them to fund these things, because they really just kind of are sitting on this because they don't want to do anything. Because even when, you know, and I'm not no fan of Andrew Doe, but when Andrew Doe came out and trying to figure out some solutions, the NIMBYs, whew, they had like banners up here, it's like, you know, like with a big whole, you know, they demonized the guy. And he's not nowhere near like the like pro houseless advocate, but he even just opened the conversation and they went after him. So what gives? Like who is truly responsible? Is it the city of Santa Ana? Is it the county? Where do we start?
Well, I think everybody is, you know, has a hand in, or has, you know, a stake to claim in this. I mean, for example, you know, the county, you know, they do have the power to, you know, pursue efforts to build more shelters, or, you know, they have a bunch of things that they can do sort of under their belt. But, you know, when I was talking to Brooke earlier today, she said, you know, the city of Santa Ana is still, you know, citing homeless people for other things than anti-camping. They're sort of getting around that anti-camping stipulation in the settlement. You know, you can't arrest people for, you know, refusing shelter if, you know, you have more homeless people than shelter beds. You know, she was saying, you know, the city of Santa Ana is citing people for, you know, keeping their property in public spaces, all these other things. And one sort of consequence of that is for homeless people, she said, to get housing vouchers, they can't have warrants or those things on their record when it pertains to law enforcement or things they're cited for. And they have to get those cleared before they get those housing vouchers and are able to, you know, get connected with those services. And when you had the coronavirus pandemic and the court shutdowns, and there was a lot of confusion about what to do with that, is all these factors compounding, you know, against these people that are trying to get help, but they can't, you know, for a variety of factors that include, you know, law enforcement citing them for other things. And, you know, those are the barriers that get put on them. And what was the other thing I was going to say? I mean, at the end of the day, everybody's going to say, you know, everybody, I think, you know, some people do or have put forward a way to sort of fix the system. You know, it's everybody, homeless advocates, you know, for as long as I've sort of reported on this issue, you know, I've always agreed that shelters are not the solution to homelessness. It's housing, and not just housing, but supportive housing. You know, supportive housing that offers services on site for people to make sure you can keep up with, you know, your rent,
Right.
You're not getting caught up on illicit drug abuse, or you're not getting caught up with the wrong people. You're finding a job. Those services are on site at those residential areas for people to get help and make sure that they're able to, like stay, in those situations, and can keep up with the rent and all of that. So yeah, that was what I was going to say is,
Yeah, and that's true. And I've been around. I remember when Muhammad Ali was very active. With around the riverbed, and he worked with Brooke and folks. So, and but then again, like I think people mentioned it, like there was the riverbed, but then people were like, we want our biking and running spaces back, and this is this looks ugly when you're driving by it, and it's like, so that's a thing. And then you look at what happened in LA with Skid Row. I mean, that's ultimately what the city started doing, right? They're just like, okay, all the houseless come to this area. You're allowed to be here. But then, all these other, like effects then happen. And now you have 15,000 people living there. And I was talking to my friend who's Jed, and yeah, like jet skis up there in LA, Catholic worker. And, he's been there for 8 years serving the houseless there. And I told him about the situation down here, and it's just like, it's like, it's challenging because, he's trying to help these people, but sometimes they do take advantage of the help. And so then what do you do with that? Cause, then there's politics and there's dynamics within it. So anyways, we could talk on and on about this, but I think, we're going to have to, as a society, grapple with this because I haven't seen any good solutions. I mean, we can talk about the proactive ways of preventing houselessness, right? Which is investing in mental health, making sure that we have things like rent control, rent stabilization. But it's like, if we're talking about housing first, when it comes to the houseless, community, we can't even get housing for the working class. For affordable housing is something that we have such a hard time doing because the NIMBYs are against that. Do you think they're going to be for shelters? No. And the last thing I'll mention is like, and why is this not just like a white homeowner type of situation when it comes to NIMBYs? I remember going to a meeting years ago in Santana at high school because they were thinking about building a shelter around the around the school, but it was like a just semi-industrial community area, but working class Latinos working in there. Man, there was like mujeres, moms that were saying like, no, we don't want this in our communities. Like there's they could be rapists, like all that, and I'm just like, damn, like NIMBYism is not just particular to just one class or one ethnicity. It's a pervading issue where it's like you want to do something about it and you might give them $1, you might give them a sandwich, but do you want them like pitching a tent in your backyard? Chances are no. And so what do you do with that, and what do you do with people that literally like are just nomadic type of people, like they don't want to get back into society, they just want to do their own thing? It's like, well, there's campsites, I guess, but they don't let you, do whatever you want there either. So it goes back to it. Like it's a balance between collective, like health and security and individual responsibility and not needing to dehumanize people, and so there's a lot of steps. And I think for, at least as I see it, step one, don't call the cops on homeless or houseless, call health professionals that can maybe try the initial, but as a person that has had people that have dealt with drug abuse, some of these folks, they burn bridge after bridge after bridge after bridge, and it's really hard at some point because even people that you love, you have to just cut them off. Like I can't help you anymore. I gave you money and you're still addicted to drugs. Like I'm not going to give you any more money. So why do you deserve housing more than a person that works 2 jobs, and has, anyways, I'm blathering on, but again, I'm kind of laying it all out that it's very complicated, right?
And also, if I don't want to add more time or add more time.
No, go ahead, please.
But, when you talk about NIMBYism in Santa Ana, when you had those residents, many of them were Latinos who were coming out in opposition to some of those shelters. It's also the equation of the responsibility of solving the homelessness crisis leveled on low-income communities, communities of color. I mean, Santa Ana, I remember a bunch of cities in the county, when it came to state mandated housing goals, they wanted all of those responsibilities, shouldered onto Santa Ana to build affordable housing. And Santa Ana officials in turn have said, now we've built more affordable housing, than was mandated by the state. So let's, relax, affordable housing requirements on developers and pursue, easier ways for developers to build luxury housing. And now you have that movement in sort of reaction to that, where Santa Ana has moved in the direction of requiring less affordable housing in their city at a time where, they knew the problem was of housing affordability was so bad that they enacted rent increase freezes and eviction bans in the city. So yeah, there's also that, right, which is the phrase, which these in the county are going to do and get out of that.
Yeah, it's it's a nuanced situation, and yeah, we're not going to solve this problem tonight. But I mean, This is what I think. Like, the Voice of OC has been totally instrumental in moving forward some of these things. I swear, like, we wouldn't have gotten a lot of the emergency shelters that we needed without a lot of the push from this paper, which is pretty much just reporting on the politics of the day. But I think it helps drive the conversation. So definitely applaud what you guys are doing. And just on that front, investigative journalism. So is it different online? Like, how do you sleuth in the COVID era?
That is a very good question. I actually haven't thought about it that much, which makes me think that it's not that different, because at Voice, we all work pretty remotely. We all worked pretty remotely before the pandemic. We would meet once a week at staff meetings, just to, as a way of like telling people we exist physically in the physical realm too, not just on the internet calling you. And, so I mean, our work really didn't change, other than the fact that we weren't able to go to in-person council meetings or go to City Hall and sit in the lobby of the city clerk's office and wait for records, or wait for somebody to show up to answer questions. Yeah. I mean, much of my job, before the pandemic was, mostly from home anyway. So, and the avenues to which we pursue investigations, largely have to do with public records databases, public records requests, which are done online or over email. Sometimes you can mail, or you can always go to the city in person to drop off a records request. But for the sake of time, I always did it at least over the internet, over email. And yeah, I mean, pursuing records, calling council members, trying to get their thoughts on what's going on. Maybe they have information about some turmoil on the council that may affect this quality of life issue that directly impacts residents. I know I'm probably leaving something out that I'm just not thinking about, because to me, it really hasn't changed the way I sort of do my work, but which is most of my investigations type stories, which you will see a few of, I think, in the coming weeks. They'll finally come around because of these records requests I conducted. Mostly were through Public Records Act requests. Like, I want to know, how much this person was paid by the city over X amount of time, stuff like that. And we do sort of navigate through anonymous tips we get, and we follow up on those. And sometimes those yield stories, sometimes they don't. So yeah, I'd say it's largely remained, mostly unaffected by the pandemic, just because we were all working from home sort of before that. We were doing it before it was cool.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess because you focus on like government accountability a lot, and the arts, like as far as the government stuff goes, they've done an okay job, I suppose, at providing meetings online and information, ways to connect on.
Compared to Anaheim.
Yeah.
Well,
right.
Yeah.
Man, I know you're what's his, that's the guy with the ponytail in Anaheim.
Spencer?
Yeah, Spencer. Yeah. That guy, he's like he reminds me of like, yeah, that hardcore journalism where he like will wait for the council members, the mayor to come out from the back and
Jump
try to
out.
ask them, because they're so non-transparent.
He
compared to-
actually, I remember going to a Santa Ana council meeting with him, and he actually did that. He found this back entrance for the council. This was when I was still new too, but he
Nice.
found this back entrance, and I think he caught Mayor Sarmiento, or he was a councilman at the time. But yeah, I mean, he's totally he is not like any other reporter you'll meet. I mean, he's totally in his own league.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering if you guys are like Zoom bombing like secret meetings and stuff. Like there's a next level of online sleuthing possible.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to reveal your secrets here. Wink. Just but one other broad question, like why are you working in this field? Why?
Oh, me personally?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I just wanted to feel important. That's a
And
joke.
what was your major?
You just want to be in the headlines.
Was it journalism?
Yeah, my major was journalism, communications.
Because you're also a part of a core member at Report for America, right? So what is that organization, which is a nationwide organization? What do they do? Like,
Yeah, it's a national
like a
national
Freemason club for, like the Adam Al-Makhariks of the world. Brandon Pho.
Yeah. It's sort of a national network of like nonprofit reporters, like the ones here at Voice. Sort of seeing news companies owned by hedge funds get gutted, for either the real estate of their newsroom buildings, or they're just the way media organizations and
It's breaking up.
to layoffs and just really seeing like this real news desert across the country. Like there's some data out there that's going to articulate it better than I, but there's just so much of the United States in terms of acreage that is just uncovered, but that is not covered by local reporters. And local reporters, it's been proven, are way more trusted than national news panel pundits on CNN or MSNBC. Like local reporters directly communicate with residents and local officials, and the fact that you have so few newsrooms like ours across the country, that sort of drives the mission of Report for America. Basically helps fund the positions of these local reporters at Sahan Journal in Minnesota, that it's known for its very expert and nuanced coverage of the Somali American community in Minnesota, and they were able to fund reporters there. They were also able to fund reporters at more recognizable news organizations like the Associated Press. But I think we have a reporter at the Long Beach Post, the new or relatively new news media organization in Long Beach. So yeah, it's sort of we're everywhere. They were able to plug reporters into different parts of the country, and ensure democracy is being upheld in areas that might not always get national attention.
Yeah,
that's good.
And I'm sure that it's like a brotherhood, or just like a group. It's
Secret society.
Secret society. Well, I mean, I'm sure it must feel good to be able to like have a network that you belong to, that you kind of understand each other, and probably feed off of each other, or kind of get just insight, or I don't know, tools to your craft. Which it's a very important craft, and I've said it many times here, and that's why it's really good to have you on, Brandon. I know you've been around for like a cool minute, not as cool, or or maybe like a cooler compared to the cooler hour or hours that these other cats like Norberto have been holding it down here. But I've read your articles, and I think you do good work, and so I think you just add to the powerhouse that has been Voice of OC in Orange County politics for a long time. And I really don't know what we would do without you, like truly. Like who else would get under Andrew Doe's skin, you know, in a way to be like, hey man, they keep asking for all these stuffs, you know, like
It's so expensive.
yeah, I'm only one man here, okay?
The noise of OC. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I go to
Ouch.
I go to bat for y'all. Just for the record, I hope you
Oh.
tell Norberto that. Besides being a monthly member, which everybody should be,
Donate today.
donate to Voice of OC. I also like protect y'all's good name
Street
against
cred.
these trolls that are coming out against y'all. I was like, who are these people? Like they're always so negative. It's like, how about we not pretend that things aren't a problem in our county and hold these people accountable? And if they were just to be just slightly more transparent, we wouldn't need to do all these private requests, right?
Hmm.
That's another part of the thing.
Yeah. If everything was working the way it 100% should be, then there would be no need for news agencies like us, except to ensure that it stays that way.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
man. Brandon, we worried whether or not we were going to be able to talk for an hour. I'm very worried that we can talk for another hour on all these things.
Worried.
Worried. Yeah, which is why we have to wrap up.
Yeah.
But man, Brandon, maybe just some final comments or
Yeah.
where folks can find your work or whatever you want to plug before we say adieu.
You can find my work at voiceofoc.org, and I would just plug the ongoing series that I'm working on, which is Handling Hate, which sort of explores what we were talking about in the early part of our conversations. What can local officials actually do, concrete steps they can actually take to sort of address racism or prejudice in the community in terms of actual quality of life solutions, stuff like that. So yeah, if you want to see more of that, stay tuned on the website. We have a few more stories coming.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, looking forward to it again. Keep up the good work. Say hello to all the cool cats and kittens and peoples at Voice of OC. Yeah. And folks over at Voice of OC. So yeah, definitely. And thanks once again for being on the show, Brandon.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for coming.
Thank you.
That was Brandon from Voice of OC.
Oh,
Brandon
yeah.
Pho. So definitely check him out. I went through I went through some articles from 2012 back in the day around gentrification and the whole thing with Claudia Alvarez and the anti-Semitic stuff against Irv Chase. I went down memory lane for a second there, just getting prepared for tonight's interview. But yeah, it's I can't say enough about Voice of OC, as we know. But yeah, it was cool to connect with Brandon, in particular around this particular issues that we talked about tonight, right?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, friend of the show. We're going to get all the Voice of OC people on here. I had to go out of my way to not include a Voice of OC story in our top stories. I feel like it's in bad form to I'll be reporting I don't know what this guy said. I didn't read it, but it seems like this is happening.
Yeah, which we have never done on this show.
Yeah, right.
Or let me read this and learn about it as you do. Together, we learn.
Yeah, I like to remain ignorant of the news when I report on the news because it's
because it's fresh.
Because it's fresh. Everyone watches the show for my reactions to the news. So, I have a different take on it. No, but yeah, I feel like we're another layer of the media spectrum on top of what Voice of OC does. We regurgitate, we chew up the news and regurgitate it at our audience, who are a bunch of little baby birds who need they have the real shit. We just we chew it up and then do a little song and dance, and then you crack wise, and then regurgitation time. But yeah, no, I mean, we kind of couldn't do this without them. And like I said, I think they actually even drive the conversation, or even especially around homelessness. a few years ago when we were fighting for shelters, right? So
Yeah, I mean, I was like, if who else covered Occupy? Who else covered all these things that were happening? Throughout. The 10 years that I've been in this community, we can always count on them to write about the issues that were impacting us. And so, yeah, I'm eternally grateful. And yeah, you're right. I think we just take the badass work that they do, and then we just chew it up for y'all, and give it back in bite-sized pieces that kind of get to the nitty-gritty.
Any idiot could understand. That's kind of our.
Yeah, part of the problem is people don't read, right? So it's like let's just talk about the elephant in the room. People have a short attention span.
What?
Exactly. Yeah. I know people like that literally in my life, and it's a challenge. But that's why we come in to be able to be like, all right, I read a bunch of articles, which I do, all day, every day.
Right before the show.
And and also before the show. And kind of get you kind of the Reader's Digest version with, of course, a little bit of satirical twist, a little tongue in cheek, a little humor,
lemon,
yeah,
a little zest, lemon, or maybe some salt.
Yeah, a little spice it up, spice up your life, baby. But yeah, it's what we do here, and but yeah, everybody has a role here, and so their role and our role are joint. And with that, I want to thank Edgar Silva for being an awesome audio video engineer. Iron Lion Media, Iron Lion Studios, where we do this here show. If you want more information about recording your band, your podcast, or your puppet show,
whatever it is,
yeah,
media services,
yeah, and also make sure to like and subscribe to all of our different platforms on Spotify, YouTube, where you can watch past shows or listen to us as you roll,
down the street
to your local lonchera
or a council meeting.
Oh yeah, or a council meeting,
or a homeless shelter outreach meeting to the community that 800 people come to. Whatever it happens to be.
I don't know if you build it, they will come. Sometimes you build it and they don't come. So, but that's
not always true. Yeah, that's the next show.
Yeah, which we're gonna have awesome guests for sure. I'm sure, and especially in our 200 show. Yeah, little kind of task for folks out there. If you would like to send a video recording or an audio recording of yourself, giving a shout out and just a congratulatory shout out, if you will, for our 200 show, we would glad to put you on, and share. And we're gonna splice and put together a little concoction of
montage
of all the different folks that are still our friends. Not all, about 90%, but it's pretty up there. So,
yeah,
people that have been on the show or follow our show.
Yeah, you guys better send stuff, because when no one sends anything, it'll be like, hey, my name's Dave. Your guys' show has been so fantastic, and then I'll put on like a fake mustache, go back and be like, you know what I'm saying?
Hey, I'm Caesar. You guys are really great. Oh, hi, I'm Mickey here.
Oh, je m'appelle français. Ah, très bien, très bien.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Anything, whatever it happens to be.
Hi guys, I just want to say you guys do a really great job.
Kermit here. What? And then I don't know. How do you Kermit? Can Kermit do it?
I just want to send a very happy and a very delighted congratulations to the very best podcast in Orange County. Yay!
There you go. Yeah. Okay. So we'll at least see those, if not our fans. So yes.
All right.
Indeed.
All right, without further ado, from Dylan Thompson and Jose Gloria and all of us here at It's Happening, we are signing off.
It's happening.
no es libertad, lo que tú vives es vulgar. Ser un esclavo sin descansar mientras que el burgués se aprovecha de tus labores. Hay que luchar para vencer este sistema capital. Hay que levantar proletarios y la guerra popular. Hay que desarrollar nuestra conciencia para podernos gobernar. Hay que levantar los que han caído, víctimas de un sistema perdido. Démonos contra el imperialismo, alza los puños para lograr el socialismo. ¿No ves? Te han cegado de realidad para no ver lo que es verdad. Te han engañado, no es libertad, lo que tú vives es vulgar. Ser un esclavo sin descansar mientras que el burgués se aprovecha de tus labores. Hay que luchar para vencer este sistema capital. Hay que levantar proletarios y la guerra popular. Hay que desarrollar nuestra conciencia para podernos gobernar. Hay que levantar los que han caído,